Since you clicked on the video, I'm going to operate with the assumption that everybody watching this is a fan of anime, a fan of martial arts, or probably fan to a certain degree of both. So this is mostly a for fun video, and we're not going to take it too serious. But something that I've always found interesting is how martial arts are presented in anime, and I'm going to go over three of them today of how they actually get certain aspects of martial arts, mixed martial arts, unarmed combat, etc. right. Couple of caveats we're going to take here right from the beginning. Caveat number one, it's still anime. So that means that all of the anime things that we expect to happen, splitting rivers, blowing doors off of buildings, running on trains, blowing up mountains, these three don't do the last one, but you get the idea. We're going to ignore all of that. It's animated, it's over the top, it's entertainment, it's supposed to be ridiculous. That's part of what makes it entertaining. But each of the three shows I'm going to talk about in this video actually get a lot right. They get certain things right and certain things wrong. And again, it's anime. You can go down any sports anime you want. Kuroko no Basket, Ice Shield 21, Prince of Tennis, which is maybe the most over the top, ridiculous, insane sports anime I've ever seen. But for the first couple of seasons, actually gets a lot right. You can do that for almost anything. When you're taking a animated medium, and you're using it to talk about things that actually exist in the real world, you're going to make it more fantastic. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with that. And I'm going to start here with the first item on the list. Now, if you're just in any way knowledgeable about the human body, human beings, martial arts in general, um, you're probably asking the question, what the hell does Baki Son of Ogre get right? Because it's one of the most ridiculous, over the top, just absurd martial arts based anime that we've seen. You've got time travel and bringing back prehistoric men and, bringing back, I think it's Murasame they bring back, like just completely over the top, ridiculous. Hanma Yujiro literally takes out like an aircraft carrier. His father, it's completely over the top. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. We get all that. Again, caveats established. We're not going to get into that part. But there's actually some things that Baki gets incredibly well, and it's very interesting to me. So the first thing I'm going to talk about here that Baki Son of Ogre gets better than actually a lot of anime, manga, fantasy novels, comics, etc. about martial arts and unarmed combat. And that's that it doesn't insult the intelligence of the viewer, reader, listener, etc. by pretending that size and talent don't matter, because they do. There's this, especially with Western audiences, and some of that has to do with how a lot of Eastern martial arts was introduced, and Bruce Lee and movies and so on and so forth. There's this myth that the whole idea of martial arts is that it can allow a little weak person to beat up a strong, not weak person. No, that's actually not the origin of martial arts at all. Martial arts, it's the martial and the arts. It is the art of combat. That is what every form of martial art is. Now, it's a spectrum. Some are purely militaristic in design. Some are completely designed to destroy the person across from you in the most efficient manner possible. Some weigh more heavily towards the art. There's a spiritual element, as well as the physical, combat element. Some have changed over time and become more sports based, so they're not really combat. As in, you're not trying to kill, maim, destroy the opponent. You're just trying to beat them into submission. Very, very different. But at the end of the day, every form of martial arts comes from the origin point of, I want to eliminate this threat in front of me. I am trying to beat the opponent. Every form of martial arts comes from there. And so, people who are bigger and people who are stronger and people who are more gifted have advantages for that. Again, we're not going to. What Baki Son of Ogre does a great job of doing is it doesn't insult the intelligence of the viewer by pretending that isn't the case. Look at MMA, look at boxing, look at wrestling. They have weight classes. They have weight classes for a reason. Yes, a smaller person who knows what they are doing can beat up, within reason, a larger person who doesn't. But two reasonably similarly skilled people who have a significant size disparity. And by the way, a significant size disparity is not as large as you think it is. It's not 50 pounds. It's like 10 pounds, 20 pounds. Like if you have two people who are in fighting shape, who know what the hell they're doing, that amount of mass difference can make a huge difference. And then you start getting into biomechanics and muscle structures and bone density, basically the things that we call talent. Reach being a huge component. Um, and that's honestly one of the biggest things that Baki Son of Ogre gets right is you have this family who happen to have this genetic predisposition to have extraordinary talent. Now, the image you see here is Yujiro's back. One of the big, anime components of this is there's the demon on their back. But again, this is one of the elements they get right. They just animate it up and take it over the top. The back is incredibly important. All of your muscles matter when you're talking about fighting. But your back is where your stability comes from. It's where a lot of your power comes from. Now, there's elements of the kinetic chain, and we'll talk about that more later because some of the two of the other shows that we're going to talk about do a great job of explaining and contextualizing the kinetic chain and how power comes about, how penetrative power comes about, etc. But Baki does an amazing job of, at least to me, of getting rid of and killing that myth that, a relatively untalented, weak person who works hard enough is going to be able to beat a talented person who works hard at all, who knows what they're doing at all. And that's just simply not the case. That is not reality. And again, it does a very, very good job of helping to establish that. So, you know, again, the ridiculousness is there, but the physical aspect, the talented aspect of what martial arts and what fighting is, it does a great job of dispelling the myth. The other thing that Baki Son of Ogre does a really, really good job of contextualizing is the importance of training and experience. So I'm actually going to first we can kind of go to the show slash manga. So Baki fights his father a few times throughout, and he has a few awakenings, which again we're gonna anime this up, but he has a few throughout. But the biggest thing that is differentiated between like the final fight and the second fight and the third fight, etc. The biggest difference with Baki is his body doesn't get significantly stronger. He doesn't learn some new special technique, which again is accurate. What he does is he gets more experience. And what truly sets him apart and allows him to reach Hanma Yurijiro's level eventually, again outside of the anime elements, is that experience. It's the constant combat. It's his body developing and adapting to the constant experience of fighting and developing those fighting instincts. Instinct is faster than thought. When I have the instinct when someone comes at me to strike them in the face versus the thought of, oh God, he's going to hit me, I should move out of the way and hit him, one of these is going to be significantly faster than the other. That's the whole point of doing katas, or pick your equivalent in your other form of martial art, drilling, practicing, etc. It is to teach the body to naturally do movements that are not natural, movements that are efficient, destructive, etc. It's teaching the body to do these things, and by teaching the body to do these things, when you're in a situation where you have the need or opportunity to do them, you're more likely to do it with no hesitation, quickly and efficiently. And efficiency is how you maximize striking power, maximize devastation to the opponent, etc. So the other thing that the show does a really good job of establishing is the importance of instinct. Again, talent is a part of instinct. Some people will pick something up incredibly quickly, and other people have to drill it over and over and over and over and over again just to be able to kind of do it instinctually. Yes, talent is a factor. Physical attributes are a factor. But experience is a factor. And if you want a real world example of this, I'm going to go into MMA here. Him being a giant douche canoe aside, look at Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor, when he was in the 140s, which was below his natural weight, had tremendous knockout power, but beyond the knockout power, what really made Conor special was his movement and his mastery of angles. He was able to strike without being hit and was able to strike while setting up the next strike incredibly efficiently. And it was a huge problem for his opponents. Then when he moved up to 155, the first time he fought Eddie Alvarez, who's a very good fighter, not an all-time great, but very good, very stable. The mind games and everything else aside, you go and you watch that fight, Conor McGregor obliterated Eddie. Eddie never had a chance. He couldn't hit him, he couldn't take him down, he couldn't get advantage, and Conor was able to just about hit him at will. And he did it by manipulating angles and position and throwing combinations and being accurate. Then you see the fight with Floyd Mayweather. You see he takes a significant period of time off, then trains to box Floyd, boxes Floyd, gets his big payday. People go, oh, it's the payday that caused him to get his ass kicked basically every other time he got in the ring except for the Cerrone fight. Not really. Conor was in great shape in those fights. His strikes still had power. You could see that in the Cerrone fight. Like, he didn't lose the physical attributes. What he lost was Conor was fighting every couple of months. Conor was constantly training. Conor was not just training and sparring and having combat and having frequent fights and his body was in an incredible rhythm, but he was fighting for MMA. And then he changed and trained for a much more restrictive, lower form of martial art in boxing, fucked up his instincts, fucked up his stances, fucked up all the things that made him special, so that the only thing he had left was his striking ability, that physical ability to generate force and punch through opponents and create impact. He still had that, but what made him special before that was the ability to apply it. And he completely lost in his later fights. You can see, even starting with the Khabib fight, where like Conor did okay against Khabib. He did better against Khabib than many have. But outside of Khabib being amazing, Conor wasn't the same Conor. That's not the same Conor that just torched Eddie Alvarez. Not as a fighter, not just the level of performance. Obviously, Khabib is better. You're going to perform worse against him. Stylistically, stance-wise, physically, instinct-wise, everything was significantly worse. Confidence-wise, because he hadn't been doing it for a long time, because he wasn't operating at that optimal level. And Baki Son of Ogre does a great job of showing that real-world application component. Baki fights enough people stronger than him, has those opportunities to grow. And what does the Hanma bloodline do? It allows him to adapt. Adaptation is instinct. That is the body figuring out, in this situation, I need to do this thing. This is now the natural reaction, and so it happens faster and more efficiently, requires less thought, and thus makes it more effective. Baki Son of Ogre does an amazing job at that. Now, the next one we're going to talk about here, and it's funny because I just dissed the art form, is Hajime no Ippo. Outside of the fact that, good God, this thing's been going on forever. It's also one of the absolute best sports or martial arts animes out there. It's very entertaining. It's really good. And they actually stay pretty true to what it is. So Hajime no Ippo is a boxing anime. Now, what's partially interesting about it is, without going deep into it, the premise is basically, what if you had, I think he's a featherweight or a super featherweight, very, very small guy. Like, Floyd Mayweather is, I think, in a higher weight division than Ippo is. But what if you had a guy down in those weights who had, relativistically, a lot of the physical attributes of a Mike Tyson? Good body balance, good speed, loose hips, fluidity of motion, and devastating power, but also the speed to apply that power in extremely destructive ways. That's basically Ippo. Now, of course, they make him like a, a just the sugariest of sugar human beings. And what I mean by that is Ippo is he's not a pussy, but he has no self-confidence whatsoever, even after he becomes a champion. Zero fucking self-confidence. It's just, it's a character flaw. Some of it's a bit tropey, but some of it is just who he is as a person, blah, 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 blah. We're not going to get deep into that. But what Hajime no Ippo does really, really well, probably better than any other anime out there, is it really focuses on the core elements of boxing. Early on, it teaches you about stances, about being southpaw versus a normal stance. So jab with the left, throw with the right. Southpaw is jab with the right, throw with the left. Orthodox versus southpaw. Some people can actually switch back and forth between the two. Some can't. Boxing in fighting. Moving in, attacking the body, attacking high, attacking within close range versus moving out, more of a points based style, leading with the jab, controlling the distance. It talks a lot about those different styles, talks about the different aspects of speed, really focuses, which is impressive and good, that a manga / anime does this, really focuses on the importance of footwork in boxing, which there is no martial art where footwork is not incredibly important. The reality is that anyone who you can take their balance away instantly becomes infinitely less of a threat. Unless they train in capoeira, but then you didn't take their balance away. They took their balance away. They did it on purpose, and there's probably going to be a kick you're not going to see coming. Um, but at the end of the day, it really, really focuses on the mechanical aspects of boxing incredibly well. Now, can you learn how to box from reading a manga, even if it gets a lot of stuff right? No, because you have to do the drills. You have to teach your body through repetition to do things it is not naturally going to do to be great at it. And even the character Takamura, who is the, Muhammad Ali level of talent, natural born fighter. Well, he still has to learn how to box. He's naturally gifted at fighting and throwing punches and applying power, etc. But it's called the sweet science for the reason. Boxing is a very scientific martial art. It's not the strongest. It's not the best. Any martial art's great. If you have a guy who's roughly around your size and you know how to do something and they don't, you're probably going to kick their ass. So we're not talking about that, but we're talking about like relative to others. You put a boxer and a mixed martial artist in a ring and you go, hey, we're taking away all those rules in boxing that make the mixed martial arts guy to be at a disadvantage. The boxer's going to get their fucking ass kicked. Because the other guy just knows how to do more things and knows how to do more things better. The other guy literally has trained to not do some of the most devastating, powerful, harmful things, but within that restriction, you achieve the pinnacle of skill. So it's just different. It focuses, but to get back to the topic, it focuses incredibly well on the importance of stances, importance of strategy, of again drilling and training and teaching the body to do things that it would not normally naturally do, to learn to do them naturally, to learn how to read and react. Where early on someone throws a punch at you and it looks like it's coming so fast, but after you've had enough punches thrown at you, you learn how to read them, you learn how to slip them, you learn how to manage movement, manage distance. Then you learn how to leverage feints and how to use your shoulders and use subtle movements and use body positioning to make someone think you're going to do something, and I might do something and I might not, and you're trying to trick their body into reacting so you can gain an advantage. And it gets into the various chess match elements of boxing, but it always focuses in on the core elements of the footwork, the training, the understanding of the opponent positioning, and also the biomechanics. All of the different moves, even the super special, oh my god, it's so anime stuff that they do, have foundation in reality. They have him using the peekaboo. They have Ippo doing, the swaying motions. They even have him doing motions where he's rolling his shoulders. Yes, they animate up. The Dempsey roll is very animated up. But if you actually look at the physical mechanics of the move being done, it fits. And if you actually think of the fact, if you're rolling, you're getting not only that additional motion from the rolling, but you're able to do a downward motion or an upward motion. You're getting the rotational power of your torso, which now activates the back, one of the largest muscle groups in the body. You get the rotational power of your hips when you plant and you shift your feet properly. And when they animate the show, they show him planting his feet, turning his hips, shifting his feet, creating the kinetic chain that creates that devastating punching power that Ippo has. So they do a great job of actually telling you where the power of a punch comes from. As it turns out, the biggest punchers aren't always the guys with the biggest biceps. In fact, the bicep actually isn't really a muscle that has a ton to do with punching power. It does other things, but it's more of a show than a go muscle. Your forearm is your stabilizer muscles. Bigger forearms, the hand size, impact, surface area, impact force, bone density, how hard your fist is. There's a lot of different elements that go into it, but one of the big driving factors is technique. If a proper punch starts at your foot and ends at your fist, it's going to come from your foot to your calf to your knee, up through your leg to your hip, up through your back to your shoulder, out through your elbow, and through your fist. This all happens incredibly quickly, but this is a kinetic chain. And especially throwing power punches is about manipulating those kinetic chains. So there's things you can do with positioning, and again, people with talent can get away with things that people who don't have said talent can't. Look at Roy Jones Jr., arguably the greatest boxer of all time. Roy Jones Jr. would throw a leading left hook. Roy Jones Jr. would spam left hooks. He had the body composition and the hand speed to do this bad thing. No one should do that. You're leaving yourself open. He can do this bad thing, and it became a weapon for him because he can do the bad thing without having to suffer the consequences of the bad thing. Now it's a weapon. Again, coming back to talent does matter. It matters a whole hell of a lot. But you can do all of these different things only these throwing different hooks, throwing types of uppercuts, doing these different things. You can only do that when you master the basics: footwork, placement, body control, balance, and then understanding the kinetic chain enough to properly deliver a punch, to properly deliver different punches, to properly chain together combinations. So I'm going to throw this, and you're going to react, and I'm going to throw here, and you're going to react another way, and then I'm going to catch you on the third shot. So I can lead you into, hey, you saw this one coming, and you saw that one coming, and you thought this was coming, and no, it wasn't, and I got you with something else. So all of that does an amazing job of getting those things right. Again, not perfect. It's animate up. Don't take it too literal. And please, nobody watching this, do not think that you can go watch any martial art anime, see what the explanation they tell you. They tell you how to do things, and then just go do it. Can watching Hajime no Ippo teach you how to go to your local gym's punching bag and more effectively hit it and train yourself how to throw a punch? Yeah, actually, yeah, it can. You absolutely can learn how to throw a proper punch and do some extraordinarily basic things from watching it because it does a really good job of explaining them and explaining things accurately. If you then go to your local boxing gym and you try to spar with somebody, you're going to find out real quick that that whole instinct thing we covered earlier, kind of important. He's got about 100,000 more reps than you do, and that's why you're going to get repeatedly hit in the face and he's not. Unless you have sufficient physical gifts and talent to overcompensate, and then maybe you stand a chance, but even then, probably not. So, third on the list, and the last one we're going to talk about, in some ways is almost or even potentially more ridiculous than Baki's Son of Ogre from the martial arts aspect. Kenichi's masters do a bunch of absolutely absurd, ridiculous things. Like they clap their hands together and put out a building fire, like stuff like that. It's absurd. But again, ignoring the anime elements, here's why this is actually my favorite martial arts anime. And it's, in my opinion, it's the one that gets more right than anybody else does. Although Hajime no Ippo gets a ton right, it also only focuses on a single martial art. History's strongest disciple, Kenichi. But what he learns is MMA. He learns a number, the core elements of a number of different styles, and it combines to eventually create a disciple who has, can do everything well, and so has the ability to choose the right weapon against the right opponent, which is kind of the idea of whether it's sambo or Krav Maga or mixed martial arts as a sport, so on and so forth. Any type of synthetic martial art or modern martial art combines elements of these various different things. Even if you look to the past, the samurai weren't just trained in they didn't just train in kendo or judo or jujitsu or karate. They trained in all of them, so they had multiple weapons, multiple ways to beat someone. That's a complete warrior. Again, going back to the origin of martial arts, the art of unarmed combat or armed combat in a lot of cases. It is literally the art form of kicking somebody's ass. That's where all of their origin is. Martial arts did not come from self-defense. They come from, I'm gonna fuck that guy up who wears a different hat than me. That's where they all come from. And eventually, different cultures, different societies figured out different specific ways to leverage and maximize the human body and to train people to do things that normal people couldn't. Some of that is instinct, some of that is physical training, some of that is using that training to change and adapt your musculature, your bone structure, etc. Making harder, denser bones via training. And this is actually the part that Kenichi gets incredibly well. Now, again, his the jiu-jitsu professor training him and changing his entire muscles into pink muscles and the perfect muscle structure and all that, thus solving the problem of but he's not talented and weak, thus he could never actually truly compete with people who are not. But I changed his talent, and thus they actually dealt with their own flawed logic by going just this super smart guy can do this thing. It doesn't actually work the way it doesn't happen. But again, outside of it, them animating it up, a lot of the different martial arts forms in this show are actually done in ways that stay very true to what they are. You have boxing, you have Chinese Kenpo, you have Muay Thai, the ultimate form of striking martial arts. You have Jiu-Jitsu, you have karate, you have um, all these different forms of martial arts, and the show does a really good job of focusing on, but what is the core philosophy or core elements of this martial art? What makes a great boxer? Okay, it's vision, it's timing, it's footwork, it's obviously technique, but it's really those things, and it's just drilling these very limited movements to the point where you are a complete master of them. Well, okay, what's the weakness of a boxer? Well, for starters, I'm going to kick your fucking legs until you can't do any more hopping around. You can't use your footwork to manipulate me and hit me from angles that I can't defend from if you can't fucking move. So I'm going to start by kicking your goddamn legs. First fight he has against a boxer. Conveniently, right before that fight, he happened to have learned leg kicks from the Muay Thai fighter. Guess what came up in that fight? But that's actually how this works. Like, in a real fight, if you took a professional boxer and a professional Muay Thai fighter at similar weight classes in similar skill divisions, the Muay Thai fighter is going to beat the dog shit out of the boxer if they don't have boxing rules to protect them. If for no other reason, they're going to kick their legs into jelly and then they're going to knee them out of existence, which is pretty much how that fight goes. Muay Thai is the ultimate striking martial art. It uses every part of the body as a weapon. It teaches you. It's about efficiency. There aren't a lot of flowery movements. There's not a lot of like what people think of when you hear kung fu. You think of the big waving arms and the big movements and the different flips, and then you have you have the different animal forms, mantis form, the tiger form, the monkey form, etc. Which the origin of martial arts, a lot of it is seeing these things in the animal kingdom and taking that as inspiration and adapting it into a form, and then using these various things to be more effective for the human body. Whether it's some of these wide big movements. Well, the wide big movement isn't about generating more force to hit you. It's about creating a distraction because you're watching the movement, which means you're less likely to know when the actual strike is going to come, because at the end of the day, every strike is either a whip or a thrust in any form of martial arts. Everything either goes in a straight line or it comes out. Those are the only two options. An uppercut is still a straight line at the end of the day. If you start here and you go up, it's still a straight line. You're coming from a different angle, but you are still either thrusting or whipping. Every form of martial arts comes from these, and the show does a really great job of showing how different martial arts take these motions, take these different training techniques, and create different advantages. Muay Thai is great for striking, but there's not a lot of grappling in it. Well, what's the value of grappling? Well, being able to control the other person's body, being able to restrict their movements, being able to control their joints. It doesn't, to a certain degree, matter how big and strong you are. If I can lock your joints in place, then you can't apply that strength and I gain an advantage. So, for example, if you're looking for self-defense or you have kids and you want your kids to learn self-defense, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of the best things you can teach your kids. For one-on-one self-defense against dealing with bullies or things like that, it's one of the absolute best things they can learn. Because they're going to learn how to control somebody's body, how to handle them on the ground, which the vast majority of street fights end up on the ground, because most people do not have the power or ability to knock someone out in a couple of shots while standing up. And if they did, well, the other person's probably not going to have much chance to do much about it. And usually the people that can do that have such a size disparity that what you know isn't going to matter a ton. Like, your best option there is kick them in the nuts, get in your car, and run them over. At that point, you got someone who's, 5'10" and 165 pounds fighting somebody who's 6'3", 240 pounds, and they're relatively in the same condition, like shape-wise. Little guy's getting his ass kicked. It kind of doesn't really matter what he knows. There's a 70-pound weight difference. That matters. But if there's a 20-pound weight difference and he has some skills and has some techniques and understands grappling, well, I'll tell you a secret. The floor, especially if it's, say, concrete, is a lot harder than your fist. And a human body that is rotating after being thrown is going to hit that floor a lot harder than the vast majority of people can punch. Throws are incredibly effective. Another great form of martial art for self-defense is Greco-Roman wrestling, for that exact reason. If I can take you down and I can get you down to the ground, or better yet, I can get you to the air and then slam you down to the ground, it don't have to look pretty or sexy, but goddamn is it effective. And if you look at what a lot of guys in MMA, especially the guys who've had a lot of success, except for elite strikers, the guys who have the most success are elite wrestlers. Yes, once I get you to the ground, jiu-jitsu kicks in. But if I want to get you to the ground, if I want to just beat your ass, wrestling is one of the best things you can learn. Also something that is shown in Kenichi. It talks about a lot of different forms. And again, gets into some of the more flowery forms as well. Again, Chinese Kempo. And I'm not using flowery here to mean weak. I just mean from the aesthetic. Muay Thai is brutally efficient. It is purely a military martial art. There isn't a, whether you're talking about like the kung fu stereotype for the movies of the wires and all that stuff and the flying swords, etc. There aren't those stereotypes. There aren't the spiritual elements. This is a military martial art that is used for war, and that's it. And now it's used for sport, but even then, like, people die in the ring. But it does get into a lot of the merits of Kempo. Again, of teaching balance, of body control, of body manipulation, of some of the training methods to make your bones harder, your body stronger, you're more resistant to pain, you have better acuity, etc. But also the proper application of force. Again, if you're watching this and you've played along this far, you've probably seen or heard or know of the concept of the 1-inch punch. Bring in the hand and then boom, and the man goes flying far away. Well, here's the thing. That's not actually just a purely Hollywood thing. The concept of the 1-inch punch, the actual mechanical function of that exists in a lot of different martial arts. But in particular, Kempo and Kung Fu and, kind of that whole tree, exceptionally good at applying that type of force, which is actually entirely dependent on the kinetic chain of using micro adjustments within the body, the turn of the shoulder all the way through, the full extension of the hand. It does these little mini micro movements, but done very quickly and very smoothly to minimize the loss of energy to generate way more force than, like, if you think big power comes from big punch, and I throw it from way far away, and I've got this big wind-up movement. Well, I can't generate the same amount of power doing this. But I can generate a lot more power than you think I can. And if I then apply that power at a fulcrum point, or at a weak point, like if I hit you right in the sternum, with a straight thrusting punch from very short range, if I fuck up your heartbeat or your breathing or hit you in the solar plexus, it's a pretty goddamn effective move. And I don't have a big windup for it, which means I can do it anytime I want, anytime I have the opportunity. But then having the control to be able to do that makes it easier for me to land the bigger shots too, because now I can mix bigger shots with smaller shots. I can do bigger movements and larger movements. I can go large to small and small to large as far as my movements, gaining advantage, mastering positioning, and being able to deal damage at any range against any reasonably size differenced opponent. Goes into some of that. Again, some of the aspects, the Seikuken, which is basically just Tai Chi, the different things on there. They're animated, they're exaggerated, but History's Strongest Disciple Kenichi will actually give you a pretty good history and understanding of the very martial arts and their philosophies and their strengths and weaknesses. And if you were interested in martial arts and you wanted to learn them, it's actually not a bad source. It's not the best source. Again, it's an anime, but it's not a bad source of being able to figure out, well, what would be the best fit for me. And they even, to a certain degree, have people that are represented in body types. Some of the different people who practice very specific martial arts have specific body types. Those are part of their character, and it's part of a visual representation of what are the strengths of this form of martial art. The judo guy in the show, is big and thick and firm and strong and just tosses motherfuckers. And when you're big and thick and strong, you actually don't need another move. Like, all you do is toss people. And if they can't really do anything about it, and it's really effective, why do I need to learn anything else? Versus if you're small and slight, using jujitsu, using locks, using leverage, and if you're small and slight and you're trying to learn how to strike, speed and placement and mobility are going to be your friends far more than trying to lift and throw somebody who you may not be able to lift and throw. But that doesn't mean you can't do damage. Doesn't mean you can't hit him with a liver shot and combo it up into a shot to the throat and so on and so forth and cause a lot of damage and defend yourself. So it's obviously I'm a fan, and obviously this is more of a this is just for fun. But I do think it's really interesting to look at these fantastical, over the top experiences you have while watching anime, and then take a look and realize that whoever made this either A, really, really is familiar with these things, or B, did a lot of research to properly show these different martial arts forms in ways that, of course, are fantastical and over the top, but stay really true to the core elements and get a lot of stuff right. And not just the visual animated component of it looking right, but the actual explanations and the fundamentals of what makes this work, what makes this effective, what is the mindset, what is the viewpoint, what is the philosophy of this form of martial art, what are you specifically trying to do best, and then how do you do it. And so that's gonna kind of wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment. If you have other martial arts anime or manga you want to bring up in the comment section, I usually respond to anybody that does comment. Really appreciate you watching the video, and hope you guys had a good time. You'll be hearing from me soon.